Okay, so let's talk about crafting chords and the basic chords that you can make, along with basic chord structures, just to get you familiar. So when it comes to crafting chords, you need to know what key of the song that you're in. Each song ever made has a certain key that it's in, and the key just means basically what notes are allowed to be played to sound right and fit within that song. It's the tone of the song. And there are different scales to dictate what chords can be played within that key. The two main scales are either the major or minor scale. Major can be associated with happy sounding songs, and minor can be associated with more sadder sounding songs. Here's an example of the A minor scale next to the A major scale. I've used the A minor scale because it utilizes all of the white notes. And the difference between the both scales is just the amount of steps that they take, or the amount of distance between each note, and that dictates what is either a minor or major scale. The distance between notes, starting from the root note. What a root note is the beginning, the starting note of the actual scale. Basic chords are normally made up of triads. Read the passage here. On a piano, a triad is a 3-note chord built from the root note. Again, the root note is the start note, or the starting note of a chord, with a third and fifth above it. For example, in C major, which is all the white notes, it's C, E, G. So for instance, in the A minor scale, the triad being built off of A minor would be A, C, and E. Let me play this to you. In A minor, it's A, C, E. Now we can add extensions to our chords. So if we're looking at A minor and we want to play a 7th chord, well, you've got the first note, second, third note, 5th note. Yeah, this is the 6th note, and that's the 7th. So this is the A minor 7th chord. And to add a further extension, you can add the 9th note, which would be then 8th, 9th. So then you've got an A minor 9 chord. You can then add a further extension by adding the 11th. Which would be the D. Now we've got an A minor add 11th chord. Now we can play the extensions to form cluster chords. What does this mean? Well, say this is our A minor 11th chord. We can form a cluster chord by basically dropping the octave of one of the notes, one of the extension notes. We can drop the 9th note in the chord down 1 octave. All that dropping down 1 octave means is you play the same note down the keyboard. So I drop it down to here. And this will be a cluster chord. Cluster meaning all the notes are quite close together. You could do it again with even the 5th note. This would create what's called an inversion, when the lowest note is the extension of the chord played in the lower octave. Now we can play extensions to form open chords. What are open chords? Well, they're chords with a lot of space between the notes. For instance, this is our A minor chord, and instead of having so many notes, all we can do is perhaps get rid of some notes. We might get rid of the 3rd note, and we could get rid of the 7th. This would be an open chord, because there's not many notes playing there. Or we could do the 1st, 3rd, and 7th. Or we can move that 3rd up 1 octave to make that. That's an open chord based off of extensions. Jumping between chords, well, say we're in A minor, we have multiple chords that have been able to be played in this key. So when jumping between chords, we want to create a chord progression. So we can start with A minor, which is the 1st chord in the scale. Then we can jump to the 6th chord, which is F major. And we can go back down to perhaps the 4th chord, which is D minor, up to the 5th, which is E minor. That's how chord progressions are made. So for instance, if I'm building chords based off of A minor and I want to jump between chords, and I said how I did before, I could start at the 1, which is A, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th, So I would build a chord based off of F, which would be, that's our triad. Then I could drop back down to 4, and from A, 4 would be D, and then we could jump up to our 5th, which would be E, and we'd end on E minor. Now, each genre has its own specific jumps that it does, meaning the notes between each chord, or the chords that are played. Common progressions in-house, as we can see here, is the 1st chord, the 5th chord, the 6th chord, and the 4th chord being played. Or you could start the 6th, go to the 4, go to the 1, and then go to the 5. As I said, each genre has its own specific variation of this, but this just means building chords based off of the notes in the scale. For instance, in A minor, as I said earlier, the 1st note would be A, the 5th note would be E, the 6th would be F, and the 4th would be D. So we'd build the triads based off of that, and then extensions or inversions, and then maybe open chords or cluster chords, based off of maybe what a reference says or genre of music you're going for. Now, jumping between chords in Garage, common Garage progressions consist of 2-5-1, 6-5-1, or going between the 1 and the 5. Here we have the 2-5-1 chord progression in A minor. As you can see, the 2nd note is a B, and we're building a chord off of the B. The 5th chord is the E, and we're building the chord based off of E, and then back down to the 1, which is an A, to make the 2-5-1, and this is what it sounds like. The 6-5-1 over here is slightly different, because we start on the 6th chord, go down to the 5th, and then back down to the 1, and this is what it sounds like. These are common Garage practices. Another common Garage trick is to literally build chords based off of the root note. What they will do in a lot of Garage is make an A minor 9 chord, which is this. As we said earlier, we build extensions, 9th meaning we add the 9th note in the scale. So this is our A minor 9. And you take this chord and you either pitch it up or down, making sure the root note, the bottom note, is still in the key. So if we've got all of the white notes, I could jump it up here, go down here, go down here. Now you'll notice as I'm doing it, there are notes that aren't in the scale. For instance, they're hitting some black notes, but that's part of this type of Garage trick. It uses notes that aren't necessarily in the scale. What this will sound like is here. And you can build chord progressions like that. So you're just taking the 1st chord and moving it up or down the keyboard, making sure that the root note is still in the scale of the actual key. So are you someone highly passionate about music production, hard working, driven, and you really want to make this work? You'd love to have your music signed by labels, have your music played at large live venues. Well, one of the main things that helped me out when I was coming up was learning off other people, having a community of other producers to talk to and learn from, get into sessions with, have teachers and mentors that I paid thousands of pounds for, which is single-handedly the quickest and best way to learn and get your music out there, especially as it's so accessible nowadays and anyone can learn how to make music. To really give yourself a chance and a one-up, mentors and having a strong community is going to be your biggest asset. That being said, I am now inviting a select few people that are hardworking and willing to join the community of producers that already have access to my course, so you can collaborate and communicate with them. The extended version of my course and 12 hours of one-on-one sessions. I often get producers DM me or email me for one-on-one sessions. This will come as a whole package. If this sounds like something you're interested in, you can apply for it via email. In the email, I want you to include a paragraph of why you think this would be a good fit, plus a couple of songs so I can see where you're at.